Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 326 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Kitchen Remedy, an interview with Dianna Brescia. My name is Daisy White.
And I'm Richard Johannesson.
Rich, I really loved this episode and I really enjoyed the podcast and doing it together. And one of my takeaways from this was that Dianna got a diagnosis of bad luck. And in spite of this diagnosis, she was jovial and loving towards her doctor, who kept her on a medication for 7 years without a diagnosis of Lyme disease.
You know, Daisy, I really enjoyed this woman's spirit as well. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about her is that she was successful in ultimately getting a diagnosis after she turned to the Lyme disease community, connected with actually one of our former guests, Michaela Hu. And because she was told she sounded limey, she went to a wonderful West Coast doctor and was able to get a proper diagnosis, where she's now going forward with on her healing journey.
Yes. And the other thing that I just loved about her was her relationship to food, you know, her lush history and roots with Italian culture and Italian food, and how it nurtured her in her childhood and all through her life. And then when she understood what was really going on with her, how she turned it around and really familiarized herself further with food and its healing and the remedies that she could get from the nurturing of the food, and how she's now turned it around to be a contribution to other Lyme patients in the Lyme community.
So Daisy, and again, we really thank you for taking time to join us as a co-host on this podcast. And folks, without further ado, we're really excited to introduce to you the Kitchen Remedy. Hey, Dianna Brescia, welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
And we are really excited to be here with you today too. But I also have a really special note for our listeners. The Lyme coach to the stars, Daisy White, who was profiled in episode 80 of our podcast, is also going to be co-hosting with me today. So you are very lucky, Dianna, and so are all of our listeners, because we have Daisy White with us today. Daisy, say hi to the folks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
We're
Hi,
really
Daisy.
It is really cool that we have you two together, and it is just really cool that we're going to have a really cool show, and we're going to go where the spirit takes us. So before we do that, Dianna, let's build out Dianna, and let's introduce you to the folks. So first of all, Dianna, I understand that you are a native New Yorker despite living on the West Coast.
I am a proud native New Yorker, and I am now living in the City of Angels.
All right, so talk to us about what it was like to grow up in New York. I understand you're from Westchester County. So for the folks who are not aware of New York's geography, you are in one of the northern suburbs north of New York City.
Yes, I am. So I wasn't too far away from you, Rich, in Long Island. My first boyfriend was from Valley Stream, actually. So yeah, so I love Long Island. But yes, Westchester County in New Rochelle, New York. That's where I was born.
All right. So what was it like growing up in New Rochelle? I mean, what was the educational system like, and what kinds of things were you doing, you know, to occupy your time and pursue your dreams?
So New Rochelle is definitely an interesting place. It is really nice. I went to elementary school there, middle school there, high school there. It's pretty diverse. But where I live, it's right by, I don't know if you're familiar, but Pelham Manor. So, you know, right over there, Larchmont, that kind of area. So it was really, really nice. As a child, I was really active, I would say, outside. I always would love to play outside with my neighbors. I do remember things being really difficult for me when I was younger. I don't know why. With school, like I was good with reading and science. However, like math was horrible for me. I'm afraid of numbers, like stay away from them, run away from them. So I was active. I was a cheerleader when I was in elementary school, middle school. I was always really creative. So I was always doing something. I come from a big Italian family also. So lots of pizza, lots of pasta. Yeah, my parents actually came from Italy back in the day. But they moved to Brooklyn, then Westchester. So I'm first generation. And yeah, just big Italian family, super strict,
All
to be
right.
honest.
So you're coming from this close-knit Italian family living in Westchester County. And what is it that you were dreaming about? What were your goals? I mean, what kinds of things were you starting to believe you would like to do as you were growing up?
Yeah. So, I guess when I was young, I was slowly just going with the motions, to just be honest with you. It wasn't until I was at probably in my 20s when I had a lot of things, a lot of clarity, if you will. Uh, I didn't really know when I was young what I really wanted to do. We were just doing, normal things other families would do, like, we would go away, spend the summers like at the beach club, that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, it wasn't until later on in my life where I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to be different. I think that I realized I was different, though, probably a little bit younger, in my teens. I didn't want to do typical things people were doing in Westchester. I I always had a really big appetite for life, and I felt like I wanted to just do something entirely different. Um, and I always had that in the back of my mind, but I never executed it for some reason. And I think it was later on, and you'll learn during this podcast, a lot of things happened to me later on, which ended basically put the puzzle pieces together to kind of where I am today.
And we'll talk about the beautiful elements of Lyme and how, in so many cases, it does allow people to put the pieces together to figure out who they are and what their purpose is. But let's talk a little bit more in detail, right? So let's build out what kinds of things were going on in your family. I'm assuming because you're from this traditional Italian family and you had all of these traditional experiences, that food was a big part of your life and family was a big part of your life, and a lot of those kinds of experiences. And tell us what that was teaching you about yourself when you were having all of these experiences that we traditionally see in our close-knit Italian families.
Yeah. So I love to cook. I think I was cooking literally outside my mom's womb. It's just something that I would do. I was always in the kitchen. I could, vividly remember like making eggs for myself at like 6 years old. There was something about cooking that I loved. I didn't know at the time, how it was going to lead me to where I am today. However, it was a therapy for me, for sure. And I would always resort going back to the kitchen, no matter what, good or bad scenario. So I love to cook, for sure.
Talk a little bit more about cooking and food and what role that plays in your Italian family, right? So I've shared with you earlier that I'm also Italian American, and my grandparents immigrated from Italy, and food was at the very center of our lives. Food was at the very center of everything we did together. So more than just having the ability to cook for yourself and having a love for cooking for yourself, talk about how that was a very important part of your culture and your family and your identity.
Yeah, so it really was pretty much, associated with my identity. We would have family gatherings, parties. We were very family oriented when I was younger. We had cousins. My mom had 2 brothers. My dad comes from a family of 5. So it was very family oriented when I was younger. And we would celebrate, we would come together for good times with food, bad times with food, I should say. And we did have a big unity around food, with celebration and, even things that weren't so good, to be honest.
So food was always an element of your culture. It was a way that you comforted one another. It was a way you celebrated one another, and it was just sort of an elixir that smoothed over any kind of challenge or any celebration that you had.
Pretty much, yes.
And you enjoyed being a part of creating that environment by contributing as a little mini chef as young as 7 and continue to do that during most of your life.
Exactly.
All right, so let me ask you another part of your childhood experience. You grew up in the Lyme Belt, right? You spent a lot of time on Long Island, which is certainly at the very heart of the Lyme Belt, right? Now, as part of either your cultural experience or as part of your educational experience as a student, did you learn anything about how to protect yourself from ticks and tick diseases?
Yeah, good question. No. So I think, and seems to be a common trend, we know the basics. We live on the East Coast. We're New Yorkers, be careful with the ticks, like, checking us every 5 minutes, but we don't really know the really in-depth details of Lyme and what a tick could actually do. So when I was younger, it's so strange. I remember like my friends or my neighbors, their dogs would come in with ticks. And like, I remember actually seeing ticks on the dog. And our parents just like, oh, be careful, check them for ticks, spray them, with bug spray for the mosquitoes. But no, I mean, yes, we all knew that ticks could give you Lyme disease, but we didn't know, the mega details associated with ticks and, all that stuff. No, we had no idea.
Give me a little more detail. So you were tick aware. You saw them on dogs. You were Lyme aware. You knew that there was this disease that you could get, but were you really taking any specific steps to avoid coming in contact with ticks? And were you taking any regular and consistent steps to check yourself to find out whether or not you had any ticks on your person?
To be honest, no, just the basics. If I remember specifically in the summer, because we were outside more as kids, I remember my mom maybe checking us, but not to the extent of like, let's vacuum the house 17 times a day, let's check our dogs. And I grew up with dogs. We had 2 family dogs, but no, just, we were really naive for sure.
Okay, so everyone knows that you're on this podcast because you have Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is something that we generally don't connect to a tick bite. But let's talk about that first. Do you ever recall being bitten by a tick, and do you recall having to remove an engaged tick off of your body?
No, I've never seen a tick on me. When I was younger, never seen a tick on me, never had the bullseye rash, and I have neurological Lyme disease. Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about when you first became symptomatic, right? When did you first start to get sick? And what were those early symptoms even before you knew you had Lyme disease?
Yeah. So, so that was, okay. So just to give you a little backstory about going back to when I was younger, I always felt like I also was in like a fight or flight scenario when I was younger, which, putting the puzzle pieces together now, I think all kind of, makes sense to, and also I was born 2 weeks early. I was 4 pounds at birth. I was a C-section. I literally was born in stress, like literally born in stress. And, loud Italian households. That's all I'm going to say. Anyhow, so yeah, kind of stressed as a kid, kind of lost, if you will, the black sheep. And then it wasn't until I hit my 20s where things were really, really coming together, and also, I think, transpiring regarding my illness. So at 25, this is when the whole experience started to happen. I was 25 years old, still living in New York at the time. I was working in Greenwich, Connecticut at a wellness cafe. I was always into health. Like I said, I love to cook. I knew it was going to be part of my life. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. I was in Greenwich. It was like a wellness cafe. And one day I was working and I just couldn't see out of my eyes. It was going blurry. And I remember getting freaked out for a minute, but then it like went back and I'm like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe I just had something weird happen for a second. And so yeah, I was 25 when the things started happening, and pretty much I couldn't see. There was blurred vision, and also I can't really even articulate what was happening to me exactly, because it was so bizarre that my vision was not only blurry, but I explain it. When I tell people my story, I explain it that it's kind of like when you turn on a television and you don't have a channel and it's static. That was actually that, that static noise and everything in between, the black and white, that was actually happening to me. So the blurred vision happened, didn't think anything of it. And then the other weird stuff started happening to me. And it was that morning when I woke up and I saw what I just explained, which totally freaks me out. And I was like, okay, what the hell's going on here? And I, like I said, always in tune with my health, always was like a health advocate even before this. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on with me. So it freaks me out. I remember, at this point in my life, I was 25. I was so lost with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. I didn't finish college because there was a lot of things going on with my family and I had to step up to the plate. So I was working 2 jobs and I was highly stressed. I was in a toxic relationship with this man that will remain nameless because it was just so highly toxic. It was just not abusive or anything, just verbally toxic and just not a good human. And I think, to be quite frank, what happened when I was 25 was the past history when I was younger, always being confused and things being hard for me, past trauma. And then the immune compromising event, which was when I was 25. And it just was the perfect storm of like, let this girl get the Lyme disease, folks, and all the in between.
All right. So you believe that you are harboring this bacteria and these tick diseases in your body. You were a healthy young person and you're able to manage it. You find yourself in the middle of a toxic relationship and you find yourself in a very difficult time with your family, and the combination of all of these events make you vulnerable, make you immunocompromised, and now this disease takes off. So tell us how the symptoms take off.
Sure. And just to clarify, not toxic with my family is great. It's just a lot's going on. I was like the black sheep, totally confused with my life. But anyway, so when I was 25, it first happened with that experience with my eyes. And I went not knowing what I didn't know. And I should mention that I'm highly intuitive, highly spiritual person. And I kid you not, I was literally getting signs to go to the doctor before this all transpired. I mean, crazy stories.
Well, give us some detail here. Your body is signaling to you that you should go to the doctor before you have any symptoms.
My body's signaling to me. I'm getting literally signs. I'm hearing things. When I was driving my car to work before that weird thing happened that night, I was like, okay, I got to go to the doctor. I literally turned on my radio in my car, I remember, and there was an ad that said, have you got your eyes checked today? And I was like, that's really weird. What kind of ad is this? And like, it was weird because I was having that blurred thing at the time when I was working. And something in me knew before it was going to happen that something was wrong with my eyes. So it was a random Tuesday afternoon, March 2014. My whole life changed. I woke up, I had that weird moment when I was working. And then I woke up and I was like, oh no, something's not right. I have to go to the doctor. So not knowing what I didn't know, I was working in Greenwich at the time. And I Googled eye doctor, just your standard eye doctor that sells sunglasses and glasses on the avenue over there in Greenwich. So I went in because I'm like, what the hell? I don't know what, maybe I need glasses. Maybe, my parents have glasses. I don't know. So I go in and it was just like a standard doctor that prescribes just like lenses and stuff like that. And she gives me a proper exam and she's like, and she's like, just looks like she's very concerned. So I'm like, is everything okay? Do I need glasses? What kind of style can I get? Like, I'm already thinking like what I'm going to get, like, and she goes, no. Who's your primary care physician? And I was like, why do you want to know that? And she goes, because I want to speak to them. She goes, have you traveled? And I said, no. I said, and she goes, anything else you're experiencing? I go, no, just my vision. So she goes, okay, we're going to call her. I'm picking up really bad optic nerve swelling. And I said, okay, what's that? And I was so naive. I had no idea. She goes, oh, I'm just really concerned. Like, she was trying not to alarm me, but I already picked up that there was something seriously wrong. So I remember leaving. I go back to my house. I was living with my parents. And I said, Mom, I just went to the doctor and I didn't tell anyone what was happening because I don't know, which is so unlike me, to be honest. I think I was just in fight or flight during that period of my life that I just didn't think to tell someone what was kind of happening. But looking back, there was some things, and I'll mention that later. So I go home and I'm like, Mom, this lady just kind of scared me. She said I had like mega inflammation of my optic nerve, and she looked really concerned. And what do we do? So my mom's like, and by the way, I'm like the queen of anxiety. I definitely overcame it through this whole thing. But of course, like back then I'm Italian. I'm always anxious, So I go to my mom. She's like, you know what, Diana, let's take you to my eye doctor. I was like, okay. So she takes me to an ophthalmologist, proper eye doctor. And it was this Russian lady. I'll never forget it. And she just looked so concerned. They did a proper eye scan. And she's like, we have to take her to the hospital. Now, this was all happening so fast that I couldn't understand, process. I'm trying to keep it together for my mother because I don't want her to have a nervous breakdown. So I'm trying to keep it together for her, but I'm nervous because we didn't even understand what they were saying. Why are you so concerned? Well, we'll tell you why. She goes, what hospital do you want to go to? We're going to schedule her for an emergency MRI. I think she may have a brain tumor. Now, what they were picking up was mega swelling and brain inflammation in my eyes from an eye scan. So now I'm like, okay, this is getting weird. What the hell happened here? I was just at work. It's a Tuesday afternoon. What the hell is going on? So my mom calls my dad. She's like, Tony, you need to come home. Diana, there's something wrong with Diana. I don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. And you have to come home from work. So he comes home and he rushes home. I'm like, take me to Greenwich Hospital, please. Take me to Greenwich Hospital. Don't take me anywhere else. Just take me to a good hospital. Because, I'm not knocking like Westchester County or anything, but Greenwich Hospital is better. So they take me to Greenwich, and I remember just like shaking like a leaf. Like I was like shaking, trembling. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So they admit me. And they're like, we're going to give you an emergency MRI with contrast. So, while this was happening, they were explaining what the severity of what it could be because of what they were picking up on the scan. So I remember going in the scan, in the MRI, and I was just like praying the whole time. I was talking to my angels. I was talking to God. I said, don't even make me get better for me. Make me get better for my family, because they're going to lose it. They're going to lose it. So I'm like praying all this stuff. It was a really long MRI, like, or maybe at the time it just felt really long, but I remember praying the whole time. I get out, and the emergency room doctor, I don't remember her name, but I remember her face. She put me back in the room with my parents, and she said, give me 10 minutes. So I turned, and by the way, my sister was pregnant and living in LA at the time with my brother-in-law. So now we don't want to startle my sister, who I'm extremely close to, and God forbid, have her go into an early pregnancy or something. So like, we're all keeping this to ourselves. But I remember actually texting my aunt, who I'm really close to too. And my uncle worked for Dr. Oz at the time. He was an executive producer. Well, they both did. Actually, no, I think he just did. But anyway, and I'm like, hey, we may need Dr. Oz's advice, like, just so you know, whatever. And so anyway, so the doctor's like, give me 10 minutes. And I turned to my mom and I said, that's a great sign. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, well, if it was urgent, she'd be right. She wouldn't say, give me 10 minutes. Like, she said, give me 10 minutes. So she comes back in and she's like, thank you so much for giving me great news tonight. You don't have a brain tumor, but we don't know what the hell's wrong with you. So you need tomorrow, you can go home. We don't know why you're experiencing this eye problem. They diagnosed me at the time with, emergency room diagnosis, photophobia, something with the eyes. She goes, but we need to send you to a neuro ophthalmologist. And I said, okay, go home. And I'm really just like a big researcher. I'm my own advocate. I'm a super nerd. I'll research for hours without going to bed.
All right, so pause there for a second, Diana. Before we go into nerdy Diana and her research, let's talk about the doctors and the interaction that you were having with your doctors, right? So your doctor is saying, this is great news. You do not have a brain tumor. We all thought you had a brain tumor. That's why everybody's rushing you to the hospital and giving you an admission and putting you in this situation and scaring the hell out of your mother and father. And, you know, it's just a crazy time for you. This crazy Italian family is now spinning around and going crazy, right? So do they say to you, well, you know, you do have inflammation, right? And your eyeballs are an extension of your brain, and all of this inflammation in your eyes is obviously an extension of your brain, and eyes are very different than any other senses, right? What else could be causing this inflammation? And, you know, is Lyme disease, you're in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Lyme disease, perhaps the reason you have this disease. Anybody say to you, we need to test you for Lyme? Anything?
Zitch, nothing. But what they didn't even test my blood at the emergency room. They just were so high, I guess, because of the severity of the swelling, who knows what else. They just gave me the MRI and just gave me a temporary diagnosis and literally told me I could go. I guess that they wanted to make sure I didn't have a tumor.
All right,
but
so once they ruled out the tumor, you were on your way.
I was on my way.
All right, so what happened next?
So I went home. Clearly I couldn't sleep because I'm like, what the hell's going on with me? And I started researching. I literally went to Google because why not? And I inputted, I think I put like best neuro ophthalmologist, United States, something like that, or something like that. And my amazing, lovely, God-sent doctor, Dr. Jeffrey Odell at New York Presbyterian, if anyone needs a neuro ophthalmologist. But so I found him, and he was the head of that department, the director, all the things. And I said, this is the guy I want to see. He's #1 here in his field. He's world renowned. I'm here in New York. I'm going to go to New York Presbyterian. I'm going to be seen by the top of the top. Because I don't mess around with my health. And I just know, and hello, it's your eyes. This is your eyes. It's not your fingers, your toes, your smell, it's your eyes. So I remember I told my mom, the emergency room doctor wanted me to actually go see this ophthalmologist in Greenwich, who I did go see before I found my doctor. And there was something like, I went to go see that guy, and he was great. And I said, there was something intuitively telling me to just not stay at that office. So the following day, I went to that Greenwich doctor, the other ophthalmologist. And I said to the doctor, I said, I just came here because you were referred from the emergency room doctor. I said, but do you know Dr. Jeffrey Odell? And he's like, yeah, he's really good. And I actually think you should go there, because they didn't understand what was happening to me. So I think it was the same day. At this point now, this chain of events, everything's happening so quickly. And it's also so hard to digest and understand. You're dealing with a lot of nerves. At this point, my sister knows now what's happening. My aunts know, everybody knows. So that
all the Italians are going crazy.
They're all going crazy. So that day I called that office at New York Presbyterian, and that ophthalmologist said, you know what, you need a neuro ophthalmologist. You don't need just a regular eye doctor. This is something going on here. So I call New York Presbyterian, Jeffrey Odell's office. And I remember calling, and my mother and we're like, hey, this is going on. Can we come in like today? And she's like, you can. I actually just had a cancellation. Just come in. Where are you coming from? We're like, we're coming from Westchester. And they're like, great, we'll see you in 45 minutes. So I run over there, and I immediately knew I was in good hands. And I'm going to shed some light on, why I love him so much, even though he wasn't able to tell me what I know now. So I immediately go there, and I see, I don't even know if I should say her name, but a politician come out of the office in hand to hand with him, like holding hands and hugging goodbye. And I was like, okay, I'm in the right spot. There was Secret Service in the waiting room. I'm like, okay, I'm definitely in the right spot.
Wait, you got to tell us who it is. Who is it?
It was Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
And she was suffering from that thing at the time. In 2014, I think she fell. So, or something with her eyes. I don't remember exactly, So yeah, she was walking out, Hillary Clinton walking out with my doctor, Dr. Jeffrey Odell. And I was like, okay, this is the man for me. So he looked like Albert Einstein. He's still alive and well. And he comes out, and he's like, and he's looking at me. He goes, yeah, I was reviewing a couple of notes. Come into my office. So we immediately hit it off, him and I think he was so friggin', they were all blown away. I was an alien. They had the residents come in. I was like a little hamster for them. Like, they're like, we're hearing all these things. What's going on? So he was so thorough. I walk in, and he's like, we're going to do my own MRI. We're going to test, gathering all the info. And this is an old school man, old school technique, doesn't mess around. Whatever, people from Japan and on go to see him, and come to see him, I should say. So he goes, we're going to give you 2 more MRIs. We're going to run your blood work for days, and we're also going to test you for Lyme disease. He goes, what have you been doing differently? I said, nothing. I said, I'm working like a crazy person, but nothing really. I mean, my diet is healthy. I never really ate bad. I mean, it's always healthy. I cook. I am on an excessive amount of vitamin D that now, looking back, it all makes sense, that my primary care doctor put me on. It was very excessive because, she said I was very deficient. They didn't know why. So she put me on like 10,000 units, I think twice a day, because that's how low I was. That's the only thing I'm saying. I'm not on meds. I don't do drugs. I don't drink. Just the vitamin D. And I said, I was on birth control though, and I just recently came off. So I don't know if that was it. And he goes, okay, are you using acne medication? No acne medication. Do you live in the woods? I said, no, but I live in Westchester, you know? And he goes, okay, we're going to test you for Lyme disease. And I said, okay. So he did his own eye scans and an MRI, no brain tumor, MRI with contrast. They literally injected, I will never forget this. They injected my eyeballs with a dye, a color, like a contrast. And I was seeing pink for 5 hours because they wanted to see if there was anything going on in the actual eyeball itself. I was a nervous wreck through this whole entire process. I don't even know. Like, I just think I was like a zombie, and I was just like taking this all in, and my parents were there again, still trying to remain calm for them. And he does all this testing. The MRI comes back. Dianna, you don't have a tumor. However, your symptoms are exactly like a brain tumor. And you're now diagnosed, Dianna, with idiopathic intracranial hypertension. He goes, but I'm amazed by you because you're 100 pounds. And usually this diagnosis is for morbidly obese people. They all come in from the woodworks, the residents examining me. They were blown away because this 100-pound woman walks in with intracranial hypertension and they have no idea why. He goes, but I'm very concerned about your vision and we need to put you on something tonight. I said, okay. He goes, but you will prevail. He says, you will prevail. I said, okay. He puts me on.
Wait a minute. I have to ask you, what about the Lyme? You're being tested for Lyme disease.
Shoot.
You got this Lyme going on here. I mean, what's happening there?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm here.
So the Lyme comes back negative. Negative. He
No
says,
way. So let's pause there for a second. So now, did they tell you what kind of Lyme test they were doing? Did they talk about the limitations with Lyme disease and the high incidence of false positives and false negatives and all these kinds of things? I mean, what information do we have? We're testing you for Lyme and what?
Yeah. No. Even though he's magnificent, he said no. So they test me for Lyme. It came back negative. It was the standard Western blot. And he said, you know what, Dianna? According to the CDC, you don't have Lyme disease. So you don't have it. He goes, but I'll check it again because there was a red flag. I think there was one ban that was coming up, but it was on the like he couldn't officially say I had Lyme disease because of the way it was. According to the CDC, I didn't have Lyme disease so he couldn't say I have Lyme. However, there was a red flag where there was a ban that came up and he was concerned and he wanted me to do it again. And I did. They retested me.
How long after?
They waited like 2 months. And they waited like 2 months. And 1 second.
All right, so you now have this second Lyme disease test. The test comes back negative again, but the doctor is concerned about Lyme disease as a diagnosis. So is he in between the first test for Lyme disease and the second test for Lyme disease? Is this doctor treating you prophylactically for Lyme disease? Is he doing anything with Lyme, or is he just sort of like sitting out there and leaving you with this weird diagnosis you know, of a 400-pound person when you're only 100 pounds and just sort of doing nothing.
Yep. So good question, Rich. So pretty much he said, so, you know, he tested me again 2 months later, came back negative. But during that time, immediately he put me on something called Diamox. So to treat the intracranial hypertension. And he said to me, Diana, you got this because of bad luck.
All right. So let's
Bad luck diagnosis is always very, yeah.
So Daisy, I mean, again, please weigh in here because I'm like, you know,
Yeah, no, so, you know, as a person who is in my position, you know, I obviously as a patient, I have enormous empathy, enormous, you know, and as in my position in chaperoning patients, I also have frustration in hearing all of this because I want to move the needle forward for you. But you know, I'm interested in, you know, what propelled you to the next place, like where and how you moved forward in this journey where, you know, Diamox, which is actually a very resurgent drug these days for multiple reasons, but where, you know, you got another tip on where you might be headed in terms of discovering what you're dealing with, because it sounds like you are being told that you have this acute problem and that there's no cause for this problem. You just have bad luck.
Yeah. So, you know, he said to me, you know, you just got this because of bad luck. And to be honest with you, that just didn't sit with me. It just didn't sit with me well. And I am a strong believer. Like I said, I'm highly intuitive and highly sensitive. And I think I always knew deep down in my gut that there was a reason for all of it. And when he said, even though I have to tell you, he's amazing. And, you know, he is world renowned, like I was telling you. I think that he just couldn't tell me that I had Lyme at the time because of the CDC, you know, standards. And so when he said that I got it because of bad luck, and I have to be honest, when I was on the medication, before I started the medication, I was really, I was afraid to take it. Like, what is this going to do to my brain and my eyes, or my body? And to be honest, I didn't have a choice because intracranial hypertension, and I should have said this in the beginning, but it leads to blindness. So my optic nerve was so jeopardized that, you know, I had no choice to take it. And it didn't sit with me well. So I decided to just be my own advocate. To be honest with you, I said to myself, I'm going to take these meds because they're going to save my vision. And he did everything he could possibly do. And by the way, I had to go see him once a month. That's how severe my vision was compromised. If I would have waited probably another day, I probably, and once your vision's gone, there's no getting it back. And if I waited another, and like, I'm not going to lie, when they told me this, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, peace out, people. Going to go on the rooftops. Like, I was just.
All right. Well, before we go to the rooftops, can one of you share with our listeners what is Diamox? Is it an antibiotic? Is it a steroidal treatment? What is it? And what was the purpose of the doctor prescribing you the Diamox?
Yes. So the Diamox it's actually a very old school,
That's usually prescribed for altitude sickness.
Yes, it is. It's prescribed for altitude sickness. And it's a lot of people take it when they're, you know, doing hiking and whatnot. And but I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry, sweetie. It's part of life. You have a pet. We all have pets.
Yes, we do.
You
He's
don't have to hide pet. We love your
okay.
pet.
Okay. He's just beeping away over here with his ball. So yeah, so it's prescribed at for altitude sickness. It's also a old school blood pressure medicine. So it's also diuretic, right? And he prescribed it to reduce the swelling.
Yeah, for edema. It's often used for edema. It's also used for altitude sickness, epilepsy, and glaucoma, actually. Yeah. So it has multiple uses. But in this situation, it was trying to reduce probably the inflammation and the pressure, given that there is probably some fluid retention around this optic nerve.
Exactly.
So now I know you love Dr. Odell, and I don't want to be critical of someone you have a love for, but I'm just wondering what the two of you think about why perhaps Dr. Odell, when prescribing the Diamox, wouldn't also prescribe doxycycline, for example, or some other antibiotic at the same time. He had a suspicion of Lyme disease. He had concerns about whether you had Lyme disease when you had your first test. There was a 2-month window between when you had the first Lyme test and when you had the second Lyme test. Why not just prophylactically treat for that as well?
Yeah. And I said that to him because when he was concerned and he sent me again for a second testing for Lyme, the markers weren't there for him to say, hey, girl, you have Lyme disease, but he was just going by the CDC. And, I love him so much for a couple of reasons. And I failed to mention this in the beginning, but he didn't even take my insurance. Like, I don't come from a wealthy family at all. And, he didn't take my insurance, and he was so kind. And he was actually, I think, really concerned because my vision was so jeopardized, and when I started taking this medicine, I didn't even want to in the beginning, but there was something, and, I did really like him because he was a really positive doctor. And I think that words are so powerful, and, there's been studies like when you talk to, I think it's on the internet, and there was like a study about like white rice. Like if you talk positivity to the white rice, I don't know how true this is or anything like that, but it never like kind of went brown. And then, the other white rice was brown, speaking negative things to it. And I don't know if that's true. And, that's silly. However, it was what he said to me that I took with me and I applied it to myself every day. He said to me, you will prevail.
And Dianna, he sounds like a wonderful man. He does. He sounds like he's a very caring man. It sounds like he wants to treat the whole patient. He understands the importance of belief so that people can heal and that you could have the proper mindset. He sounds like a wonderful, wonderful human being because he treated you without taking any money from you. So I love all that about him. But there's still a big but. I mean, this is one of the top doctors in the country. He's one of the top doctors in the world. He suspected Lyme disease, and he was afraid to treat you despite your clinical presentation, and was more willing to diagnose you with bad luck than he was willing to diagnose you with Lyme disease and treat you with a simple antibiotic, which would have saved you from years of pain. And we haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
Had he just treated you with a simple antibiotic. So I'm not attacking him because I know you love him, but the truth is, even somebody at the the cutting edge of medical treatment at the time was afraid to clinically diagnose you, even though, by the way, the CDC indicates that the Lyme disease testing is only an element of the clinical diagnosis. So if we're going to rely on CDC and we're going to rely on his reviewing of the CDC standards, then we have to hold him to the entire set of CDC standards, which indicates that we're not supposed to use the two-tier Lyme disease testing as the vehicle for testing for diagnosing Lyme disease.
Yeah, no, you're right, Rich. You're right. You're right. And when he said that I got it because of bad luck, I was just like, no, I don't believe that. And that's when I started just doing my own research. And I know that there's a root cause for everything. And I was on Diagmox for 7 years, and they couldn't wean me off right away because my optic nerve would go back into swelling. So he wanted to be, I guess, sure. But then again, of course, give her the pills, let her stay on them, whatever. So a couple of things. So when this happened and I ended up being on Diamox, I had an awakening, like a spiritual awakening. And the moment, so, in between this time, all this is happening. And when someone tells you your vision, you may lose your vision, things go through your head, and I said to myself, I'm going to live my life the best way I can possibly can. And I'm going to do what makes me happy. And I remember so vividly sitting on my mom's couch in Westchester, New York, New Rochelle, New York. And I said to myself, I'm going to move away from here. I'm going to do 3 things. And I knew LA because my sister used to live in, she moved back, but she used to live in LA. And I don't know, energetically, I had this connection with LA. So I'm like, I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to get a proper diagnosis. I'm going to find out what's going on with me, get to the root cause of my intracranial hypertension. I'm going to start a business that I love. And I'm also going to find my husband. Those were my 3 goals. 2 of them are happening right now. The third one is still up for question. So I had this awakening. I started doing my own research. Now, 2014, 2015, still in the Diamox, still in New York, still in Westchester County. 2016, I came out to LA here where I am now in Los Angeles. I went to go visit a friend. I said, you know what? Life is so short. I'm going to move here. I'm going to switch up my whole life. When you have, it's like, God forbid, getting diagnosed with cancer, you're like, you have 1 life. You better make it worth it. You better do the things you love. So that was my first spiritual awakening. I come to LA, end of 2016. I moved to Santa Monica. I was literally broke. I had like $500 to my name, and I came out here. I was living with one of my friends who was my boyfriend at the time, but he was like an earth angel. He's one of my earth angels, and I refer to earth angel all the time because I feel like people come into your life for a reason. And I'm still in the Diamox, still doing my research, really learning about what could possibly be wrong with me. Now, while I moved to LA, I started just going on the internet, doing my own research, and noticing there was a trend to intracranial hypertension and Lyme disease. Now, in this time frame, other weird things started happening. Now, I always say, and I've said this to my dear friend Michaela, who was on your podcast not too long ago. I always tell her, and she agrees, there's so many different avenues from the fake diagnosis to the initial diagnosis, to researching, to the real diagnosis, and in between. There's so much to learn and so much to take in. So jumped on the internet, started reading about intracranial hypertension and Lyme disease, noticing these weird things happening with my body. My menstrual cycle significantly changed. I gained massive weight, 30 pounds. I go, what the hell is happening here? Now, like I said, I was 5 pounds, I mean, 5 pounds, sorry. I'm only 5 feet. I wish I was 5 pounds. So, Jesus. So 5 feet. So the 30 pounds, it was significant for me. I'm like, wow, I'm heavy. And, so anyway, I'm like, I'll deal with it. If that's the only problem I have in my life, I'll deal with it. It's fine. So doing my research, started joining the wonderful Lyme groups of Facebook. So I join, I'm hearing stories, but I never had the funds to and I think you could all agree, people think, well, I can't get treated because I don't have the funds. I don't have the resources. I don't come from wealth. I'm not this one, that one. But if I can do this, anybody can do it. Anyone. There are ways, there's support, there's everything in between.
I'm sorry, before you get into that, because Daisy's going to take you through the treatment elements of your journey, talk to us about how you finally get diagnosed. I mean, we
diagnosed by a doctor for bad luck, and you are, you're kind of in the depths of the Facebook groups, and that always, it has its own journey, and I don't know if they're giving you clues, although it sounds like you're doing a great job of kind of finding your way through piecing together your understanding of, two different types of diagnoses and melding them together by your own kind of, deducing, sleuthing. But I'm still really interested in, like, who diagnosed you with Lyme disease? And was that an epiphany for you? And, were you relieved? Were you angry? Were you angry because you'd been going all these years on Diamox? And how many years did you still not be able to see and or have eye concerns, issues, symptoms before anybody said, hey, wait a minute, like, you have neurological Lyme disease? And so that is something I really want to know about.
Yeah, no, good question. So I was on the Diamox, living my life normally for 7 years. And it wasn't until the last year that I got off. Actually, I got off in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. So I got off my Diamox, and in between all these things happening with my life, me moving to LA, me working to death. I was a celebrity assistant working 13, 14 hours a day. It definitely played a toll. I was literally putting $50 a week to be seen by a Lyme literate doctor, because at the time I didn't have the capital, I didn't have the funds. And essentially, a lot of things happened in between. I went through a horrific breakup in LA to someone that, I thought I was going to marry. So here I am living normal on the Diamox. I knew I had Lyme. I did my research. I knew there was something. I didn't confirm it. I didn't confirm it because I didn't have the resources. I didn't want to spend the money. So 2020 comes, all these other weird things, hormonal. I developed Sjögren's, all the things. I have neuropathy. I have hormonal issues. I can't have stevia anymore because it was a biofilm disruptor, and I didn't know that. And I was literally going crazy mentally. I felt like my soul got sucked out, and everyone's like, oh no, it's because of the breakup. You're fine. All those things. So 2020 comes, I'm like at a pivotal time in my life. I started my business, Kitchen Remedy, which is a personal chef service, because the only thing that got through, I don't cook any longer. I have now a team of wellness chefs that go out to homes for people that have chronic illness, but also everybody now. It kind of turned into something I can't even believe. But during this time, all these things are happening. 2020 comes, and I finally get fed up with feeling like ill and also mentally not well. Like I felt uber anxiety, uber depression. I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And when I had the stevia, I just didn't even, I couldn't, I felt like there was an exorcism like taking over me. I didn't feel safe. I would cry for no reason. Like I was there knowing that I was crying, but I didn't know why I was crying. Like all the things. I finally said, but there was a point right before I did go to my Lyme literate doctor here in LA, Dr. Erica Lehman in Beverly Hills. Before that, of course, little old me, I'm trying to pivot and try to like, no, I have to, let me just go work with the insurance. Let me go see my PCP. And I went to my PCP here. He knew all about the intracranial hypertension. I had to do visits with another doctor here in LA because I wasn't in New York anymore. There was a point right before I went to Lyme literate. I said, you know what, I'll go through my insurance. Let me go to UCLA. Let them test me again. Because like, you want to believe the guys in the white coats. You want to believe like, hey, they're telling you the truth, not knocking doctors. I respect them, but
I've been on pins and needles because I work a lot with that particular doctor thinking, I know her history, as with. So tell me about your diagnosis. How did you get diagnosed with Lyme disease?
So I got diagnosed with Lyme in 2020. I finally got fed up. I made a comment in the Lyme group. It was one of these groups that were just a general Lyme group. Someone directed me to this other Lyme group, more kind of, it's more influencery, and there's a lot of, I don't know, it's made by this influencer and whatnot. I made a comment. I said, this is what's going on with my body. I think I have Lyme. Can anyone relate? And also, do you have any doctors? So my other earth angel, Michaela Who, comes to my rescue, and she leaves a comment and she goes, yeah, you sound limey. She goes, message me. So we talked, we hit it off. She goes, go see Dr. Lehman, go get diagnosed. You probably have it. She goes, and we immediately hit it off because she's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. We're both from the East Coast. We're two struggling entrepreneurs trying to build brands and trying to heal, and it's madness. So no one gets me better than Michaela. So she goes, go to Dr. Lehman. Go to Dr. Lehman, which ironically, Dr. Lehman was an eye doctor before she turned Lyme literate. So I was like, oh, wow, this is great. So I go to Dr. Lehman, go into her office. Now, mind you, I've been saving money to go see this woman, She sits me down. She goes, I don't even need to run tests, but I'm going to. She said, you have Lyme, you have mold, I guarantee it. Now, before I went to her office, my sister is a health coach, and we were putting the puzzle pieces together. And it was before I went there, she thought I had mold as well, my sister, but that was more recent. Like we always suspected Lyme. It was just never confirmed. So I went into Dr. Lehman's office. She tells me, runs the test. Yep. You have late stage neurological Lyme. No wonder why you have the intracranial hypertension. You have mold toxicity, one of the worst levels I've seen, I quote, and we need to get you on treatment.
So if I might ask, what date is this about that you're in this, first encounter, or this encounter where these epiphanies are coming to the surface? Is this in 2020, 2021?
Yeah, so it was 2020 that I went to go see her. It was actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2020 because the pandemic hit. So it was 2021, April 2021, I was diagnosed. So like a year and a half ago or some change, or almost 2 years ago. And I was diagnosed, and that's when it happened. That's when I was diagnosed. And it was confirmation. It was such a relief that I wasn't going crazy, that, I almost went blind because of Lyme, not bad luck. And now I knew all the weird things that were happening to me. And it changed my life. Lyme was definitely a blessing in disguise. It changed my entire life. There's massive blessings associated to my Lyme disease and my journey and my business. And
Yeah.
just looking back, it's like all the things are connected. It's mind-boggling.
So I want to hear all about that too, but what I want to do is just kind of back up and slow down a little bit, because one of the things that I know from what you're saying, and also just, from being with people who have these complex pictures, is that it's never, you're already giving us an idea of the different Rubik's cube of what was brought to the surface for you. Now, certainly Lyme, but Lyme is, when we say Lyme disease, there's always co-infections, often there's Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella. There are more, certainly in an IGNX, there can be more. And then mold, and there's different types of mold. And then there's different types of viruses and parasites. And so I'm interested in the soup that you were, uncovering at this moment. And what was kind of the soup that you got given, because I happen to know Dr. Lehman quite well, and I'm sure she was very thorough. So I'm interested. I mean, certainly you're everybody's so unique, but you're unique in the fact that you went for many, many, many years in kind of one mindset. And then you went, to somebody who has a very, very, very large understanding of ophthalmology and infection. So that was kind of amazing, because given your situation. But so I'm interested in, all of the things that were uncovered in that diagnostic process.
Yeah. So we discovered I have Bartonella, Babesia, I have black mold. And, now looking back, I realize that my childhood home has black mold. And it, when she told me all of this, honestly, I intuitively knew, but now it was on paper, black and white. And also I'm like, okay, I was crying at first. I was like, it was really overwhelming. And she goes, don't worry, you now have a plan of action. You have a plan of action. But, she has been very slow and sensitive with me. I'm on an herbal supplements, I'm on Cellcore. I am going super slow, because I think the concern of my vision and the intracranial hypertension and how it hit me so severely. Yes.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, it sounds to me like you, correct me if I'm wrong, like you went, and then you kind of hit like the doctor jackpot. You got, the doctor that had all the answers. So I'm interested in like, how did you begin? What were the first steps that you took in terms of treatment? What was the first month like, April, then May, and how did that look for you?
Yeah. I was really sad and frustrated that was treating something for 7 years that wasn't the root cause. And that Diamox definitely did a number on me, with my body. So I was upset about that. But then I was like, who knows? I was on it maybe I could have got weaned off sooner. I don't know. But every time he tried, my vision would kind of get worse. And so it was really slow and steady. But then when I went into Dr. Lehman and she confirmed everything, she immediately put me on supplements like Byron White. I'm on their supplements, probiotics, prebiotics, all the vitamins. When I first started my protocol, I was a little nervous just because I'm like an alien, super sensitive. You know, I wish I wasn't, but this is who I am. So I was herxing a lot. I was herxing a lot. And, you know, I can take all the pain. I don't care. Give me the pain. It's the mental side of things that freaks me the hell out. So when I start to feel like not me, you know, just not me, you know, that makes me worried. That makes me scared. So she's been super helpful with my journey. I work with Dr. Lehman. I do work with a mold doctor. I work with my sister. I'm blessed that she's a holistic health coach and knows a lot about Lyme and mold. So, in regards to my healing process, I'm not where I want to be, but I need to go slow. And at this point, I'm like, listen, I'm going slow. I'm doing all my things. I have my red light therapy, my detox baths. I have acupuncture twice a week. I'm doing the sauna. I'm doing, you know, I'm doing all dry brushing. I'm doing all the things. But for me, I have to go slow, and that's okay as long as I'm moving the needle a little bit at a time. And
I'm sorry. So it sounds like you're saying that there was, at times there were, some beginnings, some steps forward, and then potentially herxes came along. Did you have difficulty understanding the difference between a herx and or a regression? And how did you handle that?
yeah. So, I'm so lucky for the support I have. And, I started alone. Just for anyone that's out there that thinks like, well, I don't have support. I didn't have anyone. I was in this road all alone in the, dark and gray. I found my support. And I still have that support, and luckily, like I said, my sister's a health coach. I didn't know at the time I was herxing. I thought that, oh my God, all my symptoms are coming back. Like, what's happening? But, I didn't know at the time that no, your body's doing what it's supposed to do. It's killing all the bugs, it's killing all the things. And then when there were surprises in my stool, I wasn't so surprised because I was a little informed. But yeah, and a big thing for me, and it is faith and food. I go to the kitchen for that. The kitchen's my remedy, hence my business, Kitchen Remedy. And if it wasn't for cooking and using it as a therapy and my faith, I really don't know where I would be.
So I, know that a lot of Lyme patients, will begin. It sounds you've been doing this now for a year and a half. Let's just call it a year and a half. And, often it's you start a protocol for 3 months and then you get some wins. Maybe you get some regressions, or maybe, I like to say the worst thing that can happen is nothing. The best thing that can happen is you feel completely better. But the second best thing is that you feel way worse. And so I want to know about, like, what was the first pass, through for your, protocols, and then the reevaluation. How did you dip back in? Were there other practitioners or other avenues that you had to explore? I'm really interested in all that.
Yeah, no, good question. So, I think it's been slow and steady. I haven't seen anyone else. I've been working in hands in hands with Dr. Lehman and my sister. I think everything is trial and error. It's interesting. I think, every body is different. I think in my case, which, I actually consulted with Dr. Lehman a couple of days ago I follow up every couple months. And she goes, I'm not going to give you any prescriptions just yet. She goes, but one for your thyroid, because we found out now I have Hashimoto's and all the things. My levels are really low, which is probably also, the reason why I gained some weight. But, like my friend Michaela, she is on, all the prescriptions. But I think everybody is different and it's trial and error. And I think with me, in my case, I think that there has been progress. Of course, there's been setbacks, but I think it's been slow and steady. And thank God I didn't have, I'm grateful I didn't really have to reach out to anyone else. And it's just been Dr. Lehman, my sister, back and forth like that. So I think I'm on a solid, steady groove. And I've learned a lot during this process with, tips and tricks to how to navigate this world, which is, something that I'd love to share. And, I mean, I almost lost my vision. I almost went blind. It's some serious stuff. And my passion and purpose in this life is to help others. And if I could help someone avoid all the craziness that happened to me, I am here for that.
So I'm really also interested in if there's any one thing that you did, anything for you, because there was a time where people were like, what's the one thing that gets people better? And I was like, it's so many one things for so many multiple people. And then it's one thing. But anyway, my question to you is, what are some of the things that have helped you, that have moved the needle forward for you, that gave you oxygen, not literally, but in terms of like, okay, I'm in a better place right now. This is taking me somewhere new that's helping me.
Yeah. So one thing, I think there's a couple of little things, if that makes sense. I would say, the most important thing, change your diet. Make sure you're eating anti-inflammatory foods. Not everybody could go plant-based, but if you can go plant-based for a while, great. Your diet is everything. I tell everyone, like, if you buy organic, everyone buy organic. And if you can't, oh, the price is this and that, baloney. Go buy like rice or beans. You'll be fine. Live on that, instead of just the standard American diet. Your diet, binders, that's key. Take your binders, detox. Go sweat, take a detox bath. That's, it's small potatoes. Buy some, whatever you need for your detox bath. Those, not just one thing, but those little things that could move the needle, so to speak.
Got it. So food was something that moved the needle for you. Binders, which seems to be addressing some of the mold. Byron White, which seems to be helping with some of the chronic infections, possibly BART, possibly Babesia, and definitely diet. So what's your next? Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think the next thing, which is probably the most important thing, is a spiritual practice of some kind. I think that if I didn't tame my mind, I really, really just don't know where I would be. I was in a really dark place, it's crazy. And I failed to mention, they also gave me a spinal tap before the diagnosis. And I think my spiritual practice, meditation, trying to retrain your brain, the Gupta program, just meditation and just positivity is key. Even though even though the doctor at New York Presbyterian couldn't give me the answer that I probably already knew, I did take that little piece of advice, you will prevail. And I just immersed myself in it. So positivity and prayer and meditation and a spiritual practice will take you a long way. Because if your mind's not right, you're not going to heal. So,
I think there's always a little bit of a silver lining for many of us on this journey. Um, if there is a way that you could articulate that for yourself, what would it be like? How could you communicate the silver lining that is there for you?
Yeah. So I think that Lyme changed my life. It was a nightmare at first. I mean, I didn't even know I had it until, a year and a half ago. However, the hardships that happened along the way within this 7-year to 8-year journey drastically changed my life. There was blessings in between. I now know my life purpose, my passion, and all the connections I've made. I've teamed up with Michaela. We're both coming out with an e-course. It launches in January. It's going to be called Chronically Hacked. And we basically teamed up because there was a lot of people coming to us, a little bit overwhelming, saying, hey, your story's crazy. How did this happen? I'm experiencing the same thing. And since I'm I think I'm a natural healer. Honestly, I'm here to help. I want to serve. If I can help someone, you're not experiencing what I went through. So it dawned on me and Michaela were like, hey, we're trying to build brands, but also we want to help. Why don't we give them the tips and tricks and tools to navigate this crazy world? So that's how Chronically Hacked was born. And it's just like everything in between. My main brand, Kitchen Remedy, is a wellness personal chef service in LA and New York, which is doing really well. And Michaela, her My July skincare line, it's not what you put into your body, but what you put onto your body. So we want to give people the tips and tricks with that as well, and the tools to navigate. And we like to say Chronically Hacked is finesse the mess, if you will. So we're trying to give the tools and the tricks to navigate this crazy, confusing, lonely place.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you've really found a place to be of service and of contribution. This is an interesting question. It's kind of a two-part question. What is it about yourself that you didn't love that you love better?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about yourself that you loved that you love less?
Oh, that's hard. Okay, let's start with the first one. I think that, I was also a little bit younger, but I think that this whole journey and trials and tribulation, I think that really humbled me out. I think that I'm different in a great way. I say to my friends that my ego died. I don't have an ego anymore. It's dead. Done. Of course, it's healthy to have a little ego in a positive way, not a narcissistic way. However, that's a story for another day, but I don't have an ego. I was different before this journey. I was always spiritual, but I'm on a different level now. It's different. It enlightened me. It really made me realize what's really important in life. Yeah. So.
And that was a really awesome answer to a really awesome question. So I'm going to bring us to the last question of the podcast, which is, can you give us a list of the low and no cost treatment options that you would recommend somebody who would be new to the Lyme disease journey?
Sure. So, if I can do this, anyone out there on a budget, anybody can. Don't think that you need to be rolling in it to heal your body. Number one, it's eating healthy. Try to eat organic, anti-inflammatory foods. Detox baths are the way to go. Sweat, bind. Go on vitamins and start a piggy bank. Start a Lyme literate piggy bank, $20 a week. Instead of going to get your nails done, put it into your piggy bank to be seen by someone, because your health is your wealth and everything.
All right. Well,
Can I do an addendum to your last question?
You absolutely can. Sure.
So in the same, vein of advice to those that, are either newly diagnosed or those that haven't yet been diagnosed, what are some of the ways that you could help people understand that vector-borne exists and how you could help protect them? Not just tick-borne, but vector-borne.
Yeah, I would say just be aware. Awareness is key. Be aware of what you're doing, what you're around. It's not just ticks that cause these diseases. Don't be neurotic, but be just conscious, have a conscious life.
Well, Dianna, I can't thank you enough for spending so much time with me and Daisy. And folks, if you want to learn more about Daisy White, who we at Tick Boot Camp called the Coach to the Stars, she was profiled in episode 80 of our podcast. It was an awesome podcast. So bringing these two brilliant women together, I know you've all enjoyed that, and you can learn more about each one of them. We will also, in the closing row, give you more details about how you can get in touch with Dianna. So again, Dianna and Daisy, thank you so much for spending so much time with us here on the Tick Boot Camp podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you for listening to our Tick Boot Camp interview with our guest, Dianna Brescia. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Dianna, please check her out on Instagram at Dianna Brescia and at Kitchen Remedy, or visit her website at thekitchenremedy.com. Second, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Tick Boot Camp podcast, please share it with your friends on social media. Third, Tick Boot Camp has created a Tick Bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at tickbootcamp.com/bite to view the blueprint. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Boot Camp podcasts. Please take a minute to leave us an honest review on your podcast platform of choice. And finally, if you'd like to search our podcast library of over 300 episodes, subscribe to our email list, or share feedback, please visit our website at tickbootcamp.com. And thank you, as always, for listening.